No, not her! Please don't make me look at her again! No, no! I won't tell anyone! I promise! No, please!
Welcome back to another episode of Occult in the Ordinary, where we examine elements of horror and other spooky stuff present in non-horror games. In today's episode, we're talking about Psychonauts and the Rhombus of Ruin and Psychonauts 2. This video is a follow-up to my previous video on the first Psychonauts game, so go check that out if you haven't already. Before we start talking about Rhombus of Ruin, I need to address a huge problem. I do not own a VR headset, nor do I know someone who I can borrow one from. So I thought, oh, that's okay. Surely I can play this game without a VR headset, right? That was wrong. This game is strictly a VR experience. So a majority of my knowledge on this game revolves around a playthrough that I watched. Just wanted to be transparent that I myself did not physically play this game. Now that we're all settled, let's jump right into Psychonauts and the Rhombus of Ruin. This game takes place right after the ending cutscene of Psychonauts 1 and before Psychonauts 2. The plot goes that Raz, Lily, Sasha, Mia, and Oleander are on a mission to rescue Truman Zanotto, the grand head of the Psychonauts. Their search leads them to the Rhombus of Ruin, a region in the ocean where it's common for planes and ships to go missing. It's basically just the Bermuda Triangle. Right after entering the Rhombus, the jet's psychonav system begins to malfunction. Sasha and Mia lose control of the jet and we go crashing down into the ocean, knocking us unconscious. We wake up in an underwater facility held captive by these characters in lab coats and diving gear. Our captors appear to be giant fish. I thought they were kind of eerie at first, but they're pretty harmless. They don't really do anything to stop Raz from poking around the facility. It's almost like they're not being paid enough to care. Our goal is to find and rescue Sasha, Mia, Lily, and Oleander. Since Raz is strapped to a chair, clairvoyance will be our only method for exploration. Using CV on a fish outside the facility's window, we're able to continue our search. By the way, CV is what the cool kids call clairvoyance. Below the facility, we make an unsettling discovery. Surrounded by a myriad of vehicles, a psychohazardous material emits an eerie orange glow. This mineral curves and folds, mimicking the wrinkles of a brain. This is Sensorium, a material capable of distorting someone's mind when exposed to it. Individuals suffering from Sensorium poisoning may experience hallucinations and paranoia. The effects are very similar to Titanium, which induced an outbreak of hysteria in the town of Shaky Claim. I assume that Sensorium somehow disables a person's sensors, which, as we remember, are beings that function as the mind's immune system. Without sensors, waking dreams and hallucinations are free to run rampant in a person's mind. Throughout the game, we see the unnerving effects of Sensorium poisoning and how it manifests in the others. Lily believes she is tending to a garden of plants when in actuality she is playing with several live bombs. Sasha believes he is speaking to aliens when he's actually speaking with the fish guards. And Oleander believes he's in a band putting on a show. Though I'm not sure if he was actually affected by Sensorium. I think he was just messing around. Mia is affected by Sensorium in arguably the most horrifying way. She's found in a bus right above the Sensorium deposit. Using CV on her reveals that she is hallucinating that she is trying to stop a train from hitting a bus full of children. At one point, she even mentions to Raz that she needs to, quote, save these orphans. Somehow the Sensorium is preying upon Mia's trauma and feelings of guilt. In Psychonauts 1, we learned that she witnessed the burning of an orphanage she used to work at. She was forever tormented by being unable to save these children. The demons in her mind representing these children would sometimes whisper the phrases, "Why don't you help us?" and "Why did you let us die?" The Sensorium poisoning has created another scenario where Mia is desperately trying to save a group of orphans. I believe that the effects of Sensorium were especially harmful to Mia because of how close she is to the deposit. Overall, I think it's really cool that this game references a somewhat obscure aspect of Mia's character. I keep forgetting that Mia's trauma isn't something that's embedded into the story of Psychonauts 1, that it's an Easter egg you have to go out of your way to find. Once we've cured all of our friends of Sensorium poisoning, we're brought back to Raz's location. It's revealed that our captor, and the person who kidnapped Truman Zanotto, was none other than Caligosto Loboto. He somehow survived being pushed off of thorny towers. While he prepares to perform a procedure on Raz, Oleander provides us with his psi portal. We place it on the back of Loboto's head and we're able to travel travel inside of his mind. Inside Loboto's mind, we're stuck inside of the crow's nest of a ship. The ship is floating on the water inside of a giant bathtub. Our only companion is a smaller Loboto that warns us of a beast lurking in the water. This monster turns out to be a giant Loboto who attempts to sink our ship. After a simple battle, a mental vault launches out from Loboto's brain and lands on the ship. As a quick reminder, mental vaults are these little four-legged creatures that guard important memories belonging to a person. We crack it open and we get to witness Loboto's childhood. Inside the vault, we see a toy house. Two figures representing Loboto's parents appear on the porch and say their goodbyes. Loboto is being sent off to the hospital for some kind of procedure. In another area of the house, we see Loboto's parents having a conversation about their son's condition. His mother claims that Loboto is unnatural and a monster. Meanwhile, his father reassures his mother that the procedure is the best way to go about curing Loboto of his condition. In the kitchen, we view another conversation between the parents. Loboto's mother reveals to his father that all of the spoons in the kitchen are bent. She claims that Loboto bent them all without using his hands. Loboto's father is reluctant to call Loboto a psychic, insisting that they take him to see more doctors. In Loboto's room, we're inside of a baby crib. His parents enter the room and adore their newborn son. They stand and contemplate his future occupation. His mother removes the teddy bear from his crib and places it in the other corner of the room. When the parents leave, Loboto uses telekinesis to retrieve the bear. At this moment, it's clear to Raz that Loboto used to be a psychic. Raz begins to ponder about the procedure that allegedly cured Loboto of this condition. In this moment, a tear forms on the heads of each stuffed animal in the crib. Their felt is torn open, exposing the white stuffing inside of their heads. This imagery effectively communicates that Loboto had a lobotomy. The root of all his mental issues stemmed from this terrible procedure combined with the abuse he suffered from his parents. This mental vault was a complete shock. Just like Oleander's mental vault, this one allowed me to empathize with a character I previously saw as nothing more than a villain. As Loboto spent his entire childhood being demonized for possessing psychic abilities, it makes sense that he would want to strike back against the world, especially with Oleander, a person who's also dealt with abusive parents. It's a lot more clear now why the two joined forces in the first game. One thing that really stood out to me in this memory vault was the way that Loboto's parents are depicted. They both appear as dolls, while a young Loboto in this memory vault looks totally normal. They also don't have their own voices. Instead, they're voiced by Loboto himself. I tried racking my brain about why they appear like this in his mind. I wonder if it has something to do with his lobotomy. Maybe it somehow impacted his memory, causing him to remember certain details but forget others. This would also explain why his home appears as a toy, since he likely can't recall what his actual house looked like. Circling back to the parents, take a closer look at Loboto's father. There's a hole in his clothes near the left side of his chest. On his chest, we can see a stitched line over where his heart should be located. It's possible that this represents how Loboto views his father as heartless. We can't see if his mother shares this trait, but there is something interesting about her design. Look at the dress she's wearing. This dress looks exactly like the shower cap that Loboto wears, right down to the random red patches. I'm not sure what to make of this detail. After enduring his parents' abuse, why would he run around wearing a piece of his mother's clothing? My best guess is that Loboto is clinging onto the scarce happy memories he shared with his mother. We see in the crib that Loboto's parents weren't always so vicious. It wasn't until they discovered that he was psychic that they grew to hate him. Maybe Loboto still hangs on to the limited joyful memories he shared with them. I mean, it's clear he still thinks about them.
No, I didn't bend the spoons, Mommy.
Either way, it's incredibly tragic. Another thing that I have to mention is how we use CV on a young Loboto to eavesdrop on the conversations between his parents. At one point, he's hiding underneath a table, and later he's hiding in a closet. It gets so much darker when you realize that he was not only hiding because of his parents' abuse, but also because he knew what they were going to do to him. Even if they never verbally stated what they were going to do to him, he was still a psychic and he could have easily read their thoughts. Back in Loboto's crib, we see a compass float out of the baby mobile. We make our way back to the ship, and the compass returns with us. Loboto has regained his moral compass, and with his morality now restored, the giant evil Loboto from before retreats into the depths below. Back in the real world, we see Loboto finally feel remorse for all of his horrible deeds. In an act of redemption, Loboto frees all of the fish guards and our fellow Psychonauts. but he also activates the self-destruct sequence for the facility. We manage to hop on a jet and escape with all of our fellow Psychonauts just in time, bringing us to an end of Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin. Rhombus of Ruin is really neat from a story perspective and does a great job of setting up the events for Psychonauts 2. So many people were telling me that I needed to check this game out solely for Loboto's backstory, and now I completely get why. I originally thought that Rhombus of Ruin was just a silly little spin-off game and I kinda forgot about it. As a Kingdom Hearts fan, I should know better. Spin-off games can be just as impactful as mainline games. Also, thanks to everyone for keeping it spoiler-free in the comments. With Rhombus of Ruin out of the way, we can finally sink our teeth into Psychonauts 2. This game takes place shortly after the events of ROR. We kick off the adventure by diving into one of the game's most nightmarish locations, an office building. Turns out this whole office is a construct in Loboto's mind. It was created by Sasha as a means of figuring out who hired Loboto to kidnap Truman Zanotto. However, Loboto quickly catches on to this deception. We chase after him, but Loboto is capable of manipulating his mental landscape. He can move objects without touching them, extend hallways, and even defy gravity. We meet up with Oleander and close in on Loboto, yet he manages to evade us once again and we're thrown into a new area. In this place, the office construct has begun wearing down as Loboto's true mental landscape breaks free. This creates a morbid fusion between the two worlds, similar to the meat circus. Giant fleshy gums and teeth have infested the office space. This tissue spreads across the walls and floors, slowly fading into a paste-like substance. There are also pink and blue veins sprouting up from the gums and wiggling in the air. You really shouldn't take that dental phobia warning lightly. The further we get into Loboto's mind, the more the office construct begins to dwindle. In its place, dental imagery grows more and more prevalent. Loboto's mind has completely shifted from the one we saw in ROR. His mind now fits more in line with the expansive minds we explored in Psychonauts 1. In his mind, we can find figments, memory vaults, and emotional baggage, just like in the first game. However, this time around, emotional baggage sounds different. They no longer sound like the person whose mind they exist in. Now emotional baggage sounds the same across all minds. Kinda disappointing, but not a huge deal. Speaking of things that were in the first game, here we see that Raz's hydrophobia is still intact. This mechanic also underwent a minor change. Now there's no longer a horror sound effect that plays after touching the water. Instead, Raz will let out a sigh of relief after touching the ground. I like it. There were tons of times where I would sigh alongside Raz. Over in the central office area of Loboto's mind, we can find a shelf full of boxes. Behind the shelf, we can find a hidden room containing a memory vault and 3 figments. The figments resemble Loboto's parents, with the third figment being a bent spoon. It's really neat that they reference his backstory here. I was hoping that they'd make some kind of appearance. When we meet up with Lily, we're introduced to another unsettling aspect of Loboto's mind. These framed pictures on the walls. Each image threatens Loboto, ensuring that he tells no one who he works for. A majority of these images are pretty fun and playful. Then we get pictures like these. Just a plain image with black text that reads, "She's watching." Another picture has a pair of eyes just staring, floating in darkness. Whoever Loboto's working for, they've drilled it into his head that snitching is not an option. Near the end of the level, we reach a familiar looking area. It might be difficult to recognize with all the floating gum islands packed full of teeth, but one look at that giant tower in the distance is all you need to remember this place. This is Thorny Towers, home for the mentally disturbed. Or at least Loboto's memory of it. Off in the sky, we can see the same screaming faces that were present in the first game. We can even see Whispering Rock off in the forest below. On the way up to the tower, you can collect figments resembling Shigor and Mr. Pokelobe. It's incredible to see how this area has been preserved in Loboto's mind. It's also great to see this unnerving location, but with the graphical improvements that came with Psychonauts 2. Inside the tower, we see Loboto speaking with the person he works for. They're veiled by a misty darkness, and all we can make out is their glowing eyes. This figure reminds Loboto of what will happen if he dares to snitch. He tells Loboto that he'll have to deal with her.
No, not her! Please don't make me look at her again! No, no! I won't tell! I won't tell anyone! I promise! No, please!
We're kicked out of Loboto's mind and wake up on the jet. The team discuss their findings and conclude that the woman who Raz saw was Maligula. Her name alone is enough to stir up a whirlwind of emotion. It's explained that Maligula was a merciless psychic who was proficient with hydrokinesis. She was able to drown hundreds with her devastating maelstroms. It was only until Fort Kreller defeated her that her reign of terror was brought to an end. Now, according to Sasha and Mia, Maligula is long gone. However, there are people who aim to bring her back through the power of necromancy. These followers of Maligula, referred to as delusionists, exist all across the world. Sasha acknowledges that there is no scientific basis for necromancy being possible, but the concept of delusionists alone is still extremely alarming. If they truly believe in their cause, there's no telling what they'll do to achieve their goal. While we, as players, know very little about Maligula at this point, she makes a fantastic debut in Loboto's mind. When she rises above that drowned city and commands these giant water serpents at her side, she just looks so cool. Just witnessing her is enough to scare the living daylights out of Loboto. Your primary objective in Psychonauts 2 is to prevent Maligula from coming back. It's similar to Sly 2 Band of Thieves, in the sense that both stories revolve around a long-dead threat. I also make this comparison because both of these games feature terrifying antagonists. Throughout the game, we uncover more and more information regarding Maligula and her background, so we'll circle back to this topic later. For now, we've just arrived at the Motherlobe, the headquarters of the Psychonauts. This is the first hub area we get to explore. The Motherlobe isn't creepy at all, but it's still pretty damn cool. You know, if anything, I want to address how not creepy it is. While walking around the Motherlobe, you can see other Psychonauts agents going about their business. The common consensus that I see online is that the background characters look like Muppets, which, like, yeah, they totally do, but I also don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. Whenever I would try introducing people to the first Psychonauts game, one of the first questions I always got was, why does everyone look so ugly? This is something I neglected to mention in my video on Psychonauts 1. In the first game, each character looked really weird and grimy. Take for instance Bobby Zilch. He's got this overbite that exposes his giant crooked teeth. He's also got these dark brown reddish bags underneath his eyes. His hair is gigantic and asymmetrical. It almost looks like a giant piece of orange popcorn. Every character in the first game has this cartoony, disproportionate look to them. They genuinely looked like they were plucked straight out of an early 2000s cartoon. Then you see the characters in the Motherlobe, and they just seem so sanitized in comparison. While the background characters are a bit plain, I was happy to see that the major characters of Psychonauts 2 retain the charm from the first game's art style, specifically the adult characters. I feel like you could take any one of these guys, plop them into Psychonauts 1, and they'd fit right in. Speaking of new characters, upon our arrival at the Motherlobe, Raz joins the Psychonauts intern program. This program is led by Hollis Forsyth, the second head of the Psychonauts. We head over to the classroom area for orientation and get to meet our fellow interns. The interns function similarly to the campers at Whispering Rock. You can chat them up whenever you find them and learn more about their character. Sadly, there's no Campster.me equivalent for Psychonauts 2, so a majority of our knowledge on these characters stems from the game itself. Either way, I was still very excited to meet the interns when I first picked up this game. I was hoping that with a smaller cast, it would allow for their personalities to be more fleshed out, and maybe even ingrained more into the game's story. However, the interns turned out to be not exactly what I was expecting. At orientation, the interns immediately tease Raz and haze him. They accomplish this by tricking Raz into entering the storage room. They tell him that they need him to undress so that they can provide him with the intern uniform. However, once he hands over his clothes, they lock him inside. Raz is able to escape, but he ends up landing in Sasha's lab. Here, Sasha and Psychonaut agent Otto Mentalis see Raz and provide him with clothes. The disturbing thing about this interaction is that these interns may not have been the first to engage in hazing rituals. Raz receives a scavenger hunt list from the intern Norma Natividad. One of the items on this list is the Agent Orientation Laserdisc. Upon collecting it, Raz says this:
"Approved hazing rituals for new agents. Some things never change, I guess."
This item's existence suggests a history of hazing in the Psychonauts. This revelation is incredibly upsetting and confusing. Why would the Psychonauts perform hazing rituals? They should know better than anyone how hazing can severely impact someone's mental health. Sasha gives us an idea as to why the Psychonauts would perform these acts. After he provides Raz with clothes, he says this to him:
"Oh, and don't worry about the other interns, Rasputin. Initiation rituals are a common method for a specialized social group to integrate foreign elements while preserving the social exclusivity of that group. Understand?"
Thanks, Sasha.
Sasha is referring to the interns in this explanation, but this same reasoning could be applied to the Psychonauts. Hollis has a note attached to the hazing laserdisc on the scavenger hunt list. The note reads as follows: "This video contains sensitive information about the Psychonauts, as well as outdated advice that could cause serious mental injury if followed, and associated lawsuits. Do not watch before returning." After reading this note, I began to think that maybe the Psychonauts were sued at one point for hazing. Later, when you get to explore Hollis's mind, you see that she is grappling with the Psychonauts' current financial issues. It's never stated outright what got them into financial trouble, but it's possible that hazing lawsuits could have been just one of the many factors. Hollis even mentions that a lawsuit could completely bankrupt the Psychonauts when you're in her mind. This could be the reason why Hollis wants the disc, so that it can be destroyed or hidden, effectively scrubbing away the Psychonauts' history with hazing. Lawsuits or not, I was never able to get over this incident. It's awful to see that these hazing rituals have managed to live on after all this time. After this incident, my excitement for the interns had completely vanished, specifically because they never once apologized to Raz. The closest you get to an apology is from the conversation you have with Adam Joseph Gett, another intern. He gives Raz one of those backhanded apologies, saying that the hazing was just
something that's got to be done. You understand?
It's doubly frustrating when you consider that the adult Psychonauts know that the interns hazed Raz, but they don't intervene. If you speak with the receptionist, she asks Raz,
"Aren't you that kid the security cameras caught crawling through the air ducts in his underwear?"
Oh, jeez.
This confirms that there are security cameras all around the Motherlobe. These cameras may have even caught the whole hazing incident. I mean, if there are cameras in the vents, there has to be cameras in other areas of the facility. If you like the interns, I understand where you're coming from. It's fun to chat with them, and I love their designs. I was just never able to look past what they did. I found that they really soured my mood whenever they appeared. So much so that I actually dropped Psychonauts 2 when I first played back in 2021. When I looked online for opinions on the interns, I was so happy to find that I wasn't the only one who felt this way. However, earlier in 2024, I decided to suck it up and play through Psychonauts 2. I waited so long for this game, I realized that I shouldn't just let it be ruined by a few side characters. It ended up working out for me as I found this game infinitely much more enjoyable once the story shifted away from the interns. I became hooked on this game and ended up loving it way more than I could have ever anticipated. So if you relate to my situation in any way, I implore you to continue playing Psychonauts 2. It is such a wonderful little gem of a game. I genuinely do believe that all of the good heavily outweighs any of the bad. Before moving on, there is one intern I want to highlight for being a little creepy, unsettling. I'll let you decide. That intern is Sam Boole. the older sister to Dogen Bull from Psychonauts 1. Just like her brother, she too has a unique relationship with animals. You can first find her tapping on the glass of the aquarium in the Motherlobe. Later, we can find Sam again in an abandoned diner. Here, she's making pancakes with her animal pals.
Oh, Fur Lancelot, thank you. Are those the acorns I asked for? Yes? No. No, they can't be, can they? No, because I asked for acorns that were crushed, didn't I? Didn't I, Fur Lancelot? I hate to yell at you, Fur Lancelot, but I am the crushed one. It crushes my heart to see you not doing your best. Understand? Now, do I need to show you how to crush things? No? You sure? Okay. Good boy. Now, try again. But this time think about personal commitment and delivering excellence every day. All right? Sorry you had to see that, Raz.
Yeah, she's real hard on animals. During our conversation with her at the diner, Raz gets to tell her all about his friendship with her brother Dogen, and she confirms that Dogen has indeed made heads explode. On the bright side, she claims that he only did it to people that deserved it. So there's that. I need a break from the interns for now, so let's step outside the Motherlobe for some fresh air. This is the Quarry, a large area that connects to various locations. The main one I want to discuss is this little roadside attraction past the abandoned mines. Welcome to the questionable area, where the only answer is more questions. This place is full of horrifying phenomena that will leave your mind in shambles if you try to make sense of it all. Or at least that's what the signs would have you believe. The questionable area is more or less a big scam that's trying desperately to convince you that it's rife with unexplainable occurrences. I've always been a skeptic, but let's try to be open-minded about this. We'll take a brief tour through the area and you can decide for yourself if this is a hotspot for the paranormal. Let's start with the haunted water wheel. Definitely a water wheel.
Haunted water wheel? Round and round it goes. What makes it go, nobody knows? It's water, dummies. Geez, this place is a ripoff.
Okay, check this out. This is the cave of the Sasclops. This creature is a horrific mixture of a Sasquatch and a Cyclops. Inside the exhibit, we see proof of this creature's existence. A self-portrait of the monster, its journal, and its droppings.
I want to believe in Sasclops, but you're not making it easy, guys.
I will say that it is genuinely creepy how the sign of the Sasclops has an eye that follows you. I never realized it did that. Next, there's Far-Fetched Falls. This is a giant waterfall that flows in reverse. Okay, this one is legit and actually really cool, but this isn't something that's caused by ghosts or cryptids. The signs explain that the questionable area was built by Bucky Fierro. He built this recreation center on top of what he calls a power vortex. These vortexes are allegedly responsible for all the bizarre phenomena here. Raz points out that it's actually due to the Psytanium deposit in the area, so the waterfall flowing in reverse is caused by Psytanium. They even acknowledge Psytanium in the recreation center. Near the waterfall, there's a display containing fake Psytanium. The sign refers to it as a whispering rock, since many claim they can hear the quartz speaking to them. The sign also suggests that it may have been brought here by the Sasclops from its home planet, which sounds crazy, but technically they're not too far off since Psytanium did come from space. Not sure about the Sasclops thing, though. Last on our trek through the questionable area is the Forgetful Forest. Now this area is genuinely eerie. The sign nearby warns that this place is not technically part of the recreation center. The forest is covered in twisted branches that resemble clawed hands and hollow trees that look like ghosts. Inside the forest, it's dark. The path is lit up by these small glowing fungi. If you try to advance deeper into the forest, you end up back at the questionable area. Weird. It reminds me a lot of the Lost Woods from Ocarina of Time. I also love how when you're exploring the Forgetful Forest, they play this track called Stay Out of the Moonlight from Psychonauts 1. This track originally played at Whispering Rock during nighttime. It's so good. It's like this mix between relaxing and unnerving. The entirety of the questionable area reminds me so much of Gravity Falls. Tim Schafer, founder of Double Fine and writer on Psychonauts 2, has confirmed that this area was actually inspired by real-world locations. In an interview with The Gamer, Schafer acknowledges this comparison to Gravity Falls, saying, "I love Gravity Falls. My daughter and I have watched it like 4 times, but this is really inspired by actual roadside places." Schafer adds, "In California there's a place called the Mystery Spot. There are a lot of these places that purport to be power vortexes, where there's some anomaly with the magnetic structure that makes all the trees grow crooked, and often there is some actual natural phenomenon. And then they build a bunch of optical illusions and cabins around the area, and is a place to lure people, to pull them off the road and pay a bunch of money to see it. So this is what happens to one of those places when it goes belly up years later." I kinda wanna go to one of these in person. Before we leave, I should mention that the circus is in town. Yes, in Psychonauts 2, we get to meet Raz's family, the amazing Aquatos. There's Queepy, Myrtala, Frazee, Dion, Donatella, Augustus, and Grandma Nona. Raz's grandma constantly reminds him to stay away from the water. I just think it's really sweet how much she cares for him. Okay, road trip's over. Let's talk about some of the mines we get to explore in Psychonauts 2. A majority of these mines aren't very creepy or disturbing when it comes to appearances alone. The darker aspects of these mines mainly come from the stories tied to them, similar to Gloria's stage play from the first game. Just wanted to bring it up in case you're wondering why this video has more of a focus on the narrative. So while I'll spend most of my time focusing on the story conveyed in each mine, I'll be sure to mention any creepy details that crop up. Let's start with the first mine we get to explore, the mine of Hollis Forsyth.
When does class start?
As soon as you get to my classroom.
This isn't your classroom?
No. This is. So are you ready, kid?
Yeah.
And what are you ready for?
Safety.
Oh, you think the human mind is safe? Well, that's cute.
In Hollis's mind, we learn the advanced psychic technique known as mental connection. This allows Raz to attach onto stray thoughts and traverse through the air. This ability can also be used to influence a person's mind. By linking 2 ideas in a person's mind, you can modify their personality. When we connect the idea of delight and cilantro, we can see how this affects Hollis.
Not only is cilantro delicious, it's affordable and easy to grow in a window box herb garden.
If used correctly, mental connection can positively impact a person's mind and improve their mental health. Alternatively, mental connection can be used to damage someone's mind and completely warp their personality. We get an example of this after we connect the ideas of risk and money in Hollis's head. This connection leads Hollis to the realization that gambling could easily resolve the Psychonauts' current financial struggles. She develops a fixation on gambling, fully convinced that this is the answer to all of her problems. The mental vaults in Hollis's mind also demonstrate how mental connection, if abused, can destroy someone's mind. From her vaults, we learn that Hollis once interned at a hospital. Here she developed the Forsyth method. When she presented this to her boss, Dr. Potts, He stole her work and passed it off as his own. Hollis then studied mental connection to get back at Potts. She used this ability to manipulate the doctor, maybe in an attempt to get him to admit that he stole her work. Her twisting of Potts' psyche ended up shattering his mind. Potts had gone completely off the rails, running amok in the hospital. Truman Zanotto was contacted and came to the hospital to help Potts. Zanotto then offered Hollis the opportunity to join the Psychonauts, seeing potential in her psychic abilities. Hollis shares this story with Raz and helps him understand why he can't go mindlessly poking around at someone's mind. Things worked out for him in the first game, but Raz could have seriously damaged someone's mental health in pursuit of his goals, especially with people that have more severe mental issues like Boyd or Fred. But before Hollis is able to empathize with Raz, she looks completely infuriated. She crushes a nearby die with just her hands. It almost looks like she's gonna kill Raz until he expresses remorse. Meddling with someone's mind for our personal gain makes us no better than former villains Oleander and Loboto. Hollis accepts Raz's apology and helps him understand what it means to be a Psychonaut.
We're not here to change people's minds, Raz. Not here to fix people. We're here to help people fight their own demons. The ones they already have.
It's really neat to see how this affects Raz. He becomes way more cautious about overstepping any mental boundaries. After this level, Raz will always ask for someone's permission before entering their mind. While Raz has definitely grown, Sasha and Mia are very upset with him for what he did. Mia's reaction is especially shocking, given how carefree she can seem at times.
Now I know you would never tinker with my mind like that, darling, because I would levitate you to the moon.
Yikes. Moving back to Hollis's mind, you can find an Easter egg once you've completed the game. Head into the maternity ward and throw this pen at the ward sign to activate this special scene.
Keep it inside, Raz. We're almost there.
You're doing so well, darling.
Why am I pregnant?
There's no time, Raz. Loboto's consciousness is about to erupt out of your psychic uterus.
What?
You're doing really, really well, Raz.
I don't need to hear that.
Mia, I need that clown makeup.
I'm almost done.
Quickly, Raz. Kiss this piglet's behind. Loboto is almost defeated for good.
Why don't I remember any of this?
You want to remember this?
No.
That's what I thought. Push.
Ugh, not that dream again.
I don't think this qualifies as like creepy or spooky or any of that stuff, but I just wanted to bring it up. Last thing I want to mention about Hollis is the boss you fight in her mind. The Luctopus is a representation of Hollis's gambling addiction. She's foreshadowed in the cutscenes in this level where she kidnaps each of the interns. When you get to the boss, you see that the Luctopus has trapped the interns inside of giant playing cards. She literally cards them for being too young to enter a casino. That's just, it's just such a good pun, I had to bring it up. Once Hollis's mind is complete, the story shifts its focus towards the Psychic Six. These are the founding members of the Psychonauts. Their names are Ford Kreller, Otto Mentalis, Bob Zanotto, Compton Boole, Helmut Fulbear, and Cassie Opia. We learn over time that the Psychic Six fought alongside Ford to defeat Maligula. For one reason or another, the Psychic Six all went their separate ways after the battle with Maligula. Each of them struggled with the trauma associated with her and the battle. Exploring each of their minds reveals that each member of the Psychic Six feels like they were useless when it came time to fight. We're told that Ford Kreller holds the secret to stopping Maligula from rising again, so we need to repair his mind and get his help. Along the way, we also end up helping every member of the Psychic Six deal with their personal demons. However, Otto Mentalis is the exception. We never venture into his mind. So for the Psychic Six, we'll start with a look at Compton Boole, the grandfather of Sam and Dogen. He's locked himself inside of the geodesic psycho-isolation chamber near the Motherlobe, though these ones look way cozier than the ones in the first game. He put himself in here because he believes that he is a danger to himself and others. When he looks back on the battle with Maligula, he feels like he did more harm than good. After catching some bees for him in the Forgetful Forest, he allows us to enter his mind. Compton's mind appears as a cooking show where he needs to quickly prepare dishes and present them to judges. This level illustrates Compton's feelings of anxiety and his fear of judgment. A memory vault in Compton's mind shows us why he considers himself a danger to others. In the memory vault titled, "I was only trying to help," Compton sneaks into a pet shop through the window. He frees all of the animals and they rush to express their gratitude. As they swarm Compton, he quickly gets overwhelmed and unleashes a burst of psychic energy. This ends up killing every animal nearby. This freak accident haunted Compton as he sat in his jail cell. When he was let go, Ford appeared and recruited him to the Psychonauts. This memory vault is easily one of the darkest in Psychonauts 2. It gets so much worse when you consider Compton's psychic specialty. Members of the Boole family seem to excel in the use of telepathy to speak with animals. I've seen this referred to as zoolepathy or zoolingualism. When all of those animals rushed Compton to thank him for releasing them, he was hit with all of their thoughts at once. As the explosion left Compton's body, he also likely heard their screams as they were evaporated by psychic energy. It's so strange how members of the Boole family have inherited this ability to make organic beings explode. I'm sure that this is another reason why Compton considers himself to be a danger to others. I'm sure he also feels terrible for passing on this explosive ability to his grandson. It's a devastating psychic power that shouldn't be wielded by anyone, let alone a child. Compton no doubt feels responsible for the people that Dogen's hurt, even if no one is to blame. In Compton's mind, there are 3 judges evaluating his cooking. These puppets resemble goat versions of a few Psychonaut agents. There's Fawn Kreller, Otto Meat Talus, and Headbutt Forsyth. They're goofy depictions that play into the lighthearted nature of this level. Originally, there was going to be a much darker design for the NPCs here. In the documentary on the making of Psychonauts 2, Psych Odyssey, we get to see a meeting with Tim Schafer and other project members brainstorming ideas for Compton's level. Schafer proposes the idea of having all the NPCs in this level being dead animals that communicate with the player. They would have only been able to move their jaws and maybe even point their eyes around. It would then be later revealed that the animal corpses are being puppeteered by bugs crawling around inside their bodies. The other project members didn't seem too enthused by the idea. We help Compton regain his confidence and make our way to the mind of Helmut Fullbear. We unknowingly find his brain in Otto's brain frame. This is a collection of brains that were donated after death, so these brains aren't capable of thought. In the unprocessed minds category of the brain frame, we find a brain called Heptadome Harry. The cause of death isn't verified, and this person's psychic specialty is unknown. We dispense the brain and pop in to see what's going on. This mind appears as an ominous, empty void. The only thing here is a small mote of light. This ball of light is all that remains of this person's identity. As Raz puts it, Helmut is suffering from extreme sensory deprivation. Going years without any stimulation has caused Helmut's memories to deteriorate. If we put Helmut's brain inside of a normal body, he could receive fresh sensory input and cure this affliction. In an E3 panel from 2019, Schafer mentions how this level was partly inspired by his fear of falling into a coma. The idea is genuinely terrifying, and this state of Helmut's mind definitely puts it into perspective. However, Helmut is a uniquely tragic case when you consider that help was always just a few feet away. If just one Psychonaut had checked in on the minds in the brain frame, they could have saved Helmut from decades of torment. It's a real I have no mouth and must scream scenario that I can't really comprehend. At one point, Helmut reveals that he thought he had been trapped for 1,000 years, before Raz corrects him and says that it's only been 20. We exit Helmut's mind and take it to be dropped in another body. Raz still does the thing. He still does it.
Come with me, handsome.
We take his mind and place it in the body of Nick Johnsmith. Oh, I forgot to mention Nick from the mailroom. Basically, every member of the intern program was assigned a mentor. Raz was assigned to Nick Johnsmith, but when we find Nick, he's brainless. The Psychonauts suspect that a delusionist was involved, or maybe even a mole in the Psychonauts. As pressing as those matters are, we've got more serious stuff to deal with right now. The results of putting Helmut's brain here are catastrophic as he experiences sensory overload. Jumping into his mind reveals that the darkness from before has been replaced with a storm of images and color. Helmut's severe overstimulation produces a panic attack.
Whatever you do, don't have a...
Psychonauts 2 introduces a variety of enemies based on negative aspects of a person's mind. There are doubts, regrets, bad ideas, and so much more. The placement of these enemies also gives insight to each character. For example, Compton's mind introduces the judge enemy. This indicates his fear of judgment and how he judges himself too harshly. We can also look at Hollis's mind after it was influenced by Raz. Once she's hooked on gambling, bad ideas start to appear all over her mind. Panic attacks are no different. Their appearance in Helmet's mind highlights the severity of his overstimulation. These guys also look downright sinister. They've got the head of a goat skull, clawed hands and feet, and skulls that adorn their bodies. They look grisly, and I'd expect nothing less from the physical embodiment of a panic attack. They vaguely resemble the nightmares from Psychonauts 1. For me, it's their heads that are the main similarity drawing them together. The nightmares have these long horns that curl like a ram's horns. Perhaps panic attacks and nightmares are linked in the mind. It'd make sense considering that both nightmares and panic attacks are a result of powerful negative emotions. These enemies are incredibly fast and strong. They also employ various techniques to disorient you, things like teleportation and cloning. The way they zip across the battlefield and tear you to shreds, it makes you panic. It's a genius use of gameplay to get players to empathize with Helmet and understand his anxiety. Raz isn't even capable of defeating the panic attack until you learn the time bubble technique from Helmet. With this ability in tow, you're finally able to defeat the creature. As you encounter more and more panic attacks, they get easier to deal with. You learn their attack patterns and what abilities are most effective against them. It reflects how a person who suffers from recurring panic attacks will eventually learn how to combat them. We even see this development in Helmet. Helmet doesn't try to help until the fight is already over, but it's the thought that counts.
Oh, all right. I'm feeling better. I'm ready to help. Hey, where'd he go?
Once the first panic attack is defeated, Helmet's mind is restored to its original form. It's a psychedelic eruption of colors splashed onto trippy environments. Each of the areas you explore are based on the 5 senses. You reunite each of Helmet's senses to help him regain his true form. On our journey, we find a memory vault that explains how Helmet's brain ended up in Otto's brain frame. The vault, titled Ford Forgets, shows Helmet protecting Bob Zanotto from one of Maligula's attacks. Helmet is knocked into the icy waters below, and the other members of the Psychic Six assume he's dead. Before Helmet is frozen to death, he uses sneezing powder to shoot his brain out from his body. His brain lands near Ford, who retrieves it. But before he can do something with Helmet's brain, Ford's mind is shattered and he forgets all about Helmet. Eventually, Otto finds Helmet's brain and adds it to the collection, where it sits for 20 years. We see how this weighs on Helmet near the end of the level. The dark memories of Maligula take shape and try to convince Helmet that his friends abandoned him. Part of Helmet believes her words to be true, so he retreats into a memory vault to escape his negative feelings. We as players know that Maligula is a projection of Helmet's insecurities, but we're still able to understand where Helmet is coming from. It's through the reassurance of Raz alongside the mental figures of the Psychic Six that they're able to comfort Helmet and restore his faith in his friends. Up next, there's the mind of Cassiopeia. But before we can talk about Cassie, we need to talk about the legend of the Green-Needled Witch. Down by the Forgetful Forest, we run into Lizzie, who tells us all about this legend.
Has nobody told you about the Green Needle Witch who haunts these woods? Her mother was a banshee, and her father was a porcupine.
Let me guess. She hates children and kills them on sight.
No, she loves children. She follows them through the forest, and when she catches them, she gives them a big hug.
That doesn't sound so...
Impaling them on her needles, filling them with holes.
When we go into the woods and catch some bees for Compton, the witch makes an appearance. She sends a crowd of bees after Raz and he flees the forest. We don't see much of the witch after this short encounter. It's not until we reach Green Needle Gulch that we find her again. The witch is holed up inside a house protected by bees and honey. Inside, the witch greets us and reveals herself to be Cassiopeia.
Oh man, Are you gonna cast a spell or something?
Who are you? How did you get in here? And where was our security, eh?
We get the chance to ask her about her ghoulish outfit, and she gives us the details. I thought that Cassie's look may have been inspired by cryptids or perhaps a horror slasher, so I did some digging. Of course, there's the obvious comparison between her and Candyman, a slasher known for commanding bees. But in episode 15 of Psychodyssey, Schaefer compares Cassie's silhouette to another horror movie antagonist, that being Pinhead from Hellraiser. As both characters feature long needles poking out from their heads, it's a relatively accurate comparison. The funny thing about this comparison is that Pinhead isn't the only Cenobite that Cassie shares similarities with. For those unfamiliar with Hellraiser, Cenobites are these extra-dimensional beings that serve as the antagonists in the series. There are tons of Cenobites that appear all throughout Hellraiser media. In issue 19 of Clive Barker's Hellraiser comic run, we're introduced to Aparius. This is a Cenobite who, like Cassie, is a beekeeper. He tends to the Cenobite bees in hell. These demonic insects look just like regular bees, but they wield powerful stingers. I'm sure that this was just a coincidence, but it's neat either way. The bees are refusing to let Cassie leave, so we pop into her mind and see if we can sort out this issue. Cassie's mind appears as a giant library. The walls are lined with shelves full of books and filing cabinets that reach up to the ceiling. One part of Cassie's mind resembles a bustling city. Paper boats float by on a sea of ink, and giant books make up the various buildings. It's not stated directly where Cassie is from, but the Psychonauts 2 soundtrack gives us an idea. A track called Cassie's Library and Shanghai Memories suggests that Cassie is from Shanghai. A memory vault in Cassie's mind shows us Cassie's troubled past. In the vault, Cassie's escape plan. We learn that Cassie was forced to work for Fanny Flats, an infamous counterfeiter. Cassie was eventually arrested and questioned by the police. They came at her with hard evidence and gave Cassie an ultimatum. She could either keep her mouth shut and potentially face jail time, or rat out Fanny Flats and face her wrath. Both outcomes were too much to bear for Cassie, and she turned to writing as her lifeline. She printed her book, sent it off to publishers, then finally got her hands on copies of her novel, Mind Swarm. It was a huge hit, and it scored Cassie a ton of cash. She used this money to sail away, escaping the police and Fanny Flats. This memory vault is yet another grim and depressing story. It's also one that's embedded into the level. Cassie's time with Fanny forced her to develop a new personality, one capable of dealing with the harsh reality that surrounded her. Cassie refers to these identities as archetypes. This is Cassie's psychic specialty, a technique known as projection. Her teacher archetype teaches this ability to Raz, who is then able to summon his own archetype. I bring it up because Raz's archetype is voiced by Ricky Simmons. Raz himself is voiced by Richard Horvitz. These actors also portray Zim and Gur from the TV show Invader Zim. Just wanted to bring it up because I loved this show so much.
Is it supposed to be stupid?
It's not stupid. It's advanced.
If you watched it, then you know how disturbing it could be at times. The Dark Harvest episode gave me nightmares when I first watched it. In the end, Raz helps Cassie get her archetypes in order, and she's able to leave her home without the bees getting in her way. On the other side of Green Needle Gulch, we find a greenhouse sitting on top of a gigantic plant. Inside, we find Bob Zanotto, the uncle of Truman Zanotto. He greets Raz with irritation, pelting him with empty bottles. When Raz brings up Truman, Ford, and Helmet, Bob grows even more agitated. A vine in the greenhouse then constricts Raz and tosses him outside. Just a few moments pass before the vine opens the door, then urges Raz to come back inside. When Raz attempts to enter Bob's mind, the vines assist him by placing a psi portal on Bob's head and turning him around. All he has are 3 pots of dirt with no plants growing inside. We aim to help Bob by retrieving 3 seeds that can be planted in each pot. The only problem is that this moth keeps stealing the seeds and hiding them away. We sail across the waters on our side portal to reach different islands where we can find the seeds. On each island we find a bottle that contains their own little world. These sub-levels are Bob's memories, and there are 3 to explore. 1 for each seed. The first bottle we enter focuses on the memories of Bob's childhood and his mother Tia. Inside the bottle we see Bob's childhood house. It looks cozy and inviting. However, as we delve deeper into the bottle, his home begins to decay. The dishes in the sink pile up, and plant life devours the building. The moth leads us to a greenhouse, where it drops the seed. Inside we land in a well and are transported to a church. Up on the church altar we see a wooden Tia, wrapped in vines. We obtain the seed, but aren't sure what to make of this situation. A memory vault titled Tia's Greenhouse helps explain. In the memory vault, we see Bob mourning the loss of his father alongside Tia. Tia then developed a habit of spending all of her time in the greenhouse. She spent literally all of her time there, leaving poor Bob all by himself. Years later, an older Bob attends Tia's funeral, alone. He later decides to enter the greenhouse to see what his mother had been up to. The plants reveal to him that she had been drinking. A lot. So much so that alcohol is likely what killed her. As if this wasn't depressing enough, it's even more heartbreaking when you realize that Bob was the one who found Tia's body. As you approach the greenhouse in Bob's mind, you can hear his younger self calling out to her. These are the moments leading up to him discovering her body.
Do it out in the greenhouse for so long. Mom? You out here?
If it wasn't obvious already, Bob's mind centers around his struggles with alcoholism. In the real world, we can see his greenhouse is littered with empty beer bottles. We can even see him taking a sip out of a flask he keeps stored in his beard. His mind indicates the extremity of his alcoholism by appearing in this flooded state, representing how Bob attempts to drown the memories that haunt him. We can find a more concrete example of this behavior in the first bottle we explore. There we find a statue of a young Bob drowning in the water, revealing that Bob's methods are successful in snuffing out his dark past. The brilliant thing about this metaphor is that it also exposes Bob's flawed line of thinking. While these memories are definitely being drowned, they manifest in his mind as giant stone statues, meaning that the water won't be enough to simply wash them away. They will sit below the surface, and once the flood has subsided, Bob will be forced to confront these memories, reinforcing that his alcoholism is only a temporary solution to his problems. In the second bottle, we find a shipwreck. The moth appears again, taking the seed here and running off with it. We go deeper inside the ship and end up at a flooded version of the Motherlobe. The seed we want is sitting inside of Truman's office. Once there, we hear Bob arguing with Truman about being fired.
Fired? You can't fire me! I helped create this place! Recruited by Ford Crawler himself! No pipsqueak nephew's gonna fire me!
A memory vault called Cutting the Roots shows this interaction in detail. After the battle with Maligula, we see Bob mourning the loss of Helmet Fullbear. This moment is ultimately what got him to start drinking. Bob's alcoholism is what led to him being fired, which is confirmed by Mia earlier in the game. We can see on Truman's face that he feels guilty for doing this to Bob, but it's something that can't be avoided. Bob looks back on his days with the Psychic Six before tossing out the memories. In his grief, he isolated himself by creating this giant vine that his greenhouse now sits on top of. This memory vault not only illustrates what got Bob on this path, but also how his habits have affected the people closest to him. You can tell that Truman doesn't want to fire Bob, but he feels as if he has no choice. In fact, a lot of people are worried about Bob, but don't know how to approach him due to his explosive temper.
You spend time with Bob Zanotto?
No, Bob doesn't really want to spend time with anyone these days. He cut himself off from everybody after he lost Helmet. I'm worried about him, but I don't know how to help.
In the last bottle, we find the seed in a boggy swamp illuminated by string lights. The moth appears as expected and runs off with the seed. We then make our way onto the top of a giant wedding cake. Here we can find giant toppers resembling Bob and Helmet, confirming that these are the memories from their wedding. We climb inside the fake Helmet's head and get to see memories of the ceremony. This moment is just so beautiful. During this segment, Raz can only walk, encouraging us to relax and feel the moment.
I used to think I loved plants more than people, until I met this man.
When these feelings appeared in my heart, I thought they were weeds, and I tried to pull them out. But this mighty oak has given me shade, shelter, and something to lean on when I needed it. Just when I thought I was turning to seed, you made me bloom again. I do.
It's a bittersweet moment as we now understand the origin of Bob's drinking habits. He was under the impression that Helmet died in the battle with Maligula, so he turned to the bottle for comfort. It's a cruel twist of fate that both Bob and his mother would turn to alcohol after losing their partner. Once we return with the last seed, we face the boss of this level. The seeds we gave Bob grow into giant plants that resemble Tia, Truman, and Helmet. These twisted representations of these characters wreak havoc on Bob's mind, creating a giant whirlpool. This boss represents the trauma associated with these individuals from Bob's past. They appear as giant, powerful monsters because he's neglected these feelings for so long. As the battle rages on, the moth desperately tries to protect Bob by forcing him into a cocoon. When I first played this level, I couldn't figure out what the moth was supposed to symbolize. Clearly, it's some sort of defense mechanism created to protect Bob from his trauma. So I assumed that it represents alcohol, but why does it appear as a moth? Turns out that moths in the real world have a connection to alcohol. By using a technique known as wine roping, you can attract moths to a specific location. This process involves warming up wine and dissolving sugar into it. Once that's done, take some ropes or another absorbent fabric and dip it into the liquid. Take these ropes and hang them outside, and eventually they will attract moths. Now that I know this, I think that the moth was a genius choice for Bob's mind. In the end, we see that Bob is able to confront his problem and toss away the moth for good. We even see for a brief moment how the pattern on the moth's wings looks like Bob's face. This further strengthens the connection between Bob and the moth, and I just think it's a really cool detail. In the final scene of Bob's mind, we see that his mind is full of seeds, which he is ready to tackle once at a time. It's a hopeful and beautiful end of this level. It's also extremely heartwarming to see Bob and Helmet reunited in the real world. Last on our journey through the minds of the Psychic Six is Ford Cruller. I didn't discuss him too much in the first video on Psychonauts 1, so I'll take some time to introduce him now. Ford Cruller is the original founder and leader of the Psychonauts. In the first game, he's found in his lab underneath the Whispering Rock, but he's also in the lodge, and in the boathouse, and near his trailer. Ford claims it's a disguise used so that he can keep a close eye on the kids. Ford later reveals that his psyche was shattered in a psychic duel. This caused Ford to develop numerous personalities, which he falls into whenever he leaves the cave below Whispering Rock. The huge Titanium deposit here is the only thing holding his mind together. In the first game, Ford becomes a psychic stowaway in Raz's mind, allowing him to be summoned with a piece of bacon whenever help is needed. In Psychonauts 2, Raz uses some bacon from the cafeteria to summon Ford again. Ford lands in the Motherlobe and quickly loses his memories again, since he's been separated from the Titanium. He splits into 3 different personalities: Barber Ford, Mail Clerk Ford, and Bowling Attendant Ford. We venture into the mind of each Ford and uncover the story of his relationship with a psychic named Lucrecia Muggs. From the memory vaults in Ford's mind, we get the full story. Ford and Lucy were introduced to each other through Auto Mentalis. Lucy was from the country of Grulovia, a place she decided to leave after her husband was killed in the war there. She assisted Ford and Otto with her powerful hydrokinesis, which was used for hydraulic mining of Titanium. Ford and Lucy really hit it off and had their first date at a bowling alley. One day, Lucy was shocked by the war raging in her home country and decided to return. She spent a long time there, leaving Ford all alone. He got a letter back from Lucy claiming that the war was over, but now the people of Grulovia had become a problem. Ford tried writing back to her, expressing that he and her friends were worried about her. However, this letter never made it to its destination. A while later, Lucy's new identity, Maligula, was all over the news. We see how her friends, the other members of the Psychic Six, react to the news. The Psychonauts are called in to deal with the situation, but they're conflicted. They work on a plan to save their friend, and then they jump into battle. The rest is history. Inside of each Ford mind, we recover these shards that help us piece together Ford's psyche. We find each shard inside of a more anatomically correct interpretation of Ford's head. It's real gory. Whenever you get a shard, you need to pull it out of these miniature brains, and damn does that look painful. After putting Ford's mind back together, Ford starts acting strange.
Rasputin,
Agent Cruller, how do you feel?
I've done a terrible thing. And so have you.
But we just wanted to undo what Maligula did to you.
Maligula didn't do this to me. That's the first thing I've learned in here. The rest, you're gonna have to see for yourself.
And we're launched into the most frightening level in Psychonauts 2. The Tomb of the Sharkophagus. We begin in an open graveyard. It's eerily silent. For the time being, all you can hear is the crickets and owls in the nearby forest. Inside the graveyard, a giant comb appears and pushes us forward. We land in an open grave and get buried by a new Ford, the Gravedigger. Raz claws his way out of the dirt and wakes up in a new area. It looks like we're inside of a well or a rabbit hole. As we float down, we land on platforms that lead us to the various Ford identities. They don't really help us understand what's going on. They just sort of spout nonsense.
Lucrecia? Where is she?
Safe. She's safe. Well, she was. We all were. Not anymore.
At the bottom of this area, we fall into Maligula's grave. From here, we're able to explore an area within her coffin. Around the corner, we find a bed with two skeletons laying on top of it. The scene that plays here is chilling. I have to let it play out on its own.
Ah! Who's that?
That's your grandparents, Laszlo and Morona. They drowned in the Valermo Dam disaster, remember?
What? No! Grandpa Laszlo died there, but Grandma made it out and came to live with my father.
No, Raz, she didn't.
Ford, I just saw her today.
No, you didn't.
Further into the coffin, we also find a device called the Astrolabe. This machine can make permanent alterations to a person's psyche. Ford explains that he used the Astrolabe on Lucy to isolate and bury the part of her that was Maligula. After that, he had to hide her, since the world would never forgive her for her crimes. We exit the coffin, and Ford tells us where he hid Lucy.
Oh no. I hid her among her family, Rasputin. Among your family.
No, no, no!
I projected memories and feelings on your father so he would accept her.
Accept Maligula?
Yes. That's your grandmother.
No!
This whole level is an incredible build-up to the reveal of Maligula being Raz's great aunt. The way you have to slowly float down through Ford's mind builds a sense of anticipation as you hope to find some answers. When you talk with each of the Ford identities, it feels like he's just beating around the bush. You feel frustrated alongside Raz. It feels like Ford is not only struggling to confront his mistakes, but also like part of him is worried about telling Raz the truth. I feel like Ford's difficulty with confronting his past is also demonstrated in the level itself. The way that these memories are literally buried is so clever. When Ford said, "No, you didn't," my mind began racing. In the brief moment before the reveal, I had already conjured up dozens of nonsensical theories in my head. At that moment, I just wanted answers more than anything. The music also does a great job at highlighting this spooky atmosphere. The track that plays here is so ominous, but it also has an adventurous vibe to it. It mirrors how I felt when I first played this level. I was feeling a mixture of unease and excitement to finally learn more about Maligula. Since you play this level at a point in the story where you don't really know too much about about her. Then the piano that plays in the coffin right before the big reveal is so good. It's so dark and suspenseful. It's really well done. I also like how this level features no enemies at all. I feel like I would have been really pulled away from the story if I had to stop and fight sensors every few seconds. The cutscene after this level is just heart-wrenching. Raz is rightfully furious with Ford and tries to tell his family the truth. What gets me about this scene is that Ford tries to tell Raz that he can't tell his family about Lucy or they might try to kill her. When Ford says this, you can hear that Raz keeps walking. It says so much about how he's feeling in this moment, and honestly, I don't blame him. Ford is only able to stop Raz when he says that threatening Lucy could reawaken Maligula. Raz manages to let go of his anger for the sake of the mission, but you can tell at times that he's still coping with Ford's lie. Later at Green Needle Gulch, we can ask Ford about the situation in detail. He reveals that he used the astrolabe to also make Lucy afraid of water. That way she would never risk getting too close to the water and reawakening her powers. Ford created this whole idea of a curse, which was passed on to Augustus, who then passed this on to Raz. The curse is a complete lie.
There is no curse?
Rasputin, there's no such thing as magical curses. Please, this is science.
I think Raz should have just been allowed one smack on Ford. I mean, it's only fair after the first game.
You have to be my field agent, Rasputin. Are you ready?
No, not yet.
How about now?
Online, I've seen multiple people propose the idea that the Hand of Galocchio is actually Raz subconsciously using his hydrokinesis. We've seen psychic abilities passed on through generations, so it makes sense that Raz would also be able to use hydrokinesis. Once you complete the game, the Hand of Galocchio even changes so that it will no longer attack Raz. Instead of swiping at him and pulling him under the water, it will instead bounce him into the air. Then if you fail to reach land in time, Raz will do a flip and the hand will catch him. It's so cool. With Ford's mind reassembled and the Psychic Six having conquered their personal demons, we're all set to use the astrolabe on Lucrecia. We plan on using the device to bury Maligula even deeper into Lucy's mind, thus preventing Maligula from ever returning. We pump up the astrolabe and jump into Lucy's mind with the Psychic Six. Inside, we see the construct that Ford planted. This little flea circus convinces Lucy that she's always been a close member of the Aquato family. We head deeper into Lucy's mind and find an area made of felt. This area represents Lucy's happier memories, like the time she spent with her family. In this area, we can find a memory vault that illustrates how Maligula came to be. The vault, titled The Deluge of Grulovia, shows Lucy after leaving Ford and heading back to Grulovia. During this time, protests in Grulovia were growing more and more rampant. The people of Grulovia protested the rule of Theodore Malik, the person who Lucy was manipulated into working for. She was ordered to rain down on the protesters to discourage their gatherings. Her rain ended up flooding a dam in Grulovia. The water rushed through the streets and killed tons of people. This included Lucy's sister, Morona. After seeing her sister's dead body in the water, something inside her broke, and she transformed into Maligula. At this point, we already knew that Lucy had killed Morona, but this memory vault helps us understand that it was a complete accident. This moment is what brought out the Maligula identity within Lucy. Ford explains that Maligula is something we all have buried deep within our minds. Maligula is our fight or flight response, the part of our mind that urges us to do whatever it takes to survive. But she wasn't just brought to life through the trauma of killing her sister. She also came to be as a result of Lucy's sensitive state of mind. Earlier, Ford mentioned that he didn't want Lucy to return to Grulovia because she was in a sensitive state of mind. According to him, the Psychic Seven got up to all kinds of weird mental experiments that influenced them. This left them psychically defenseless. But it wasn't a big deal because they all had each other and they stayed within the safety of the Heptadome. However, Lucy ran away to a war-torn country and that did even more damage to her psyche, meaning that Maligula is also a result of the experiments Lucy conducted with the Psychic Seven.
That doesn't sound safe.
Now you wouldn't understand. It was an age of exploration. But you're right. We were messing with powers we didn't understand, and now I have to clean up this mess.
We dig even deeper into Lucy's mind and find where Maligula is hiding. She's in this tattered up, flooded mess. Over in the corner of Lucy's mind, we see a giant wall that's being strapped shut with chains. The wall wiggles back and forth as water leaks from the inside. There's no doubt now that Maligula is in there, trying to break free. Before you pop open the lock and face Maligula, you can find all of Lucy's emotional baggage in this section of her mind. Their placement here reflects how Maligula is tied to deeply traumatizing memories. In fact, this is also the only place in Lucy's mind where you fight any enemies. Censors, enablers, panic attacks, bad moods. A whole collection of mental afflictions jump out at you once you arrive in this place. When you bust open the lock on Maligula's cage, we see her giant eyes appear from behind the waters. God, she's terrifying. We gear up to fight her and we're pulled right out of her mind. We're pulled out of Lucy's mind by Truman Zanotto. Lily explains that he's been acting strangely, so we jump into his mind to figure out what's going on. His mind looks strange, like we're inside the mind of someone obsessed with Truman. Turns out this whole area is a facade created by Nick John Smith. Well, not Nick John Smith. His true identity is Gristo Malik, the son of Theodore Malik. His mind appears as a big theme park ride that explains his plan and backstory in detail. His mind really creeped me out.
Gristo Malik's aim was true. Our fatherland did rise anew. He made a plan and fooled the man who took Maligula.
It reminds me of It's a Small World, which was probably intentional with that song that plays throughout the level. I don't know, it's something about those dolls, I just hate seeing them. There's a section of Nick's mind that is based on his brief time at Whispering Rock. It's such a cool little nod to the first game. You can find figments here based on the campers. One figment based on Crystal and Clem is placed on top of the roof of one of the cabins, alluding to their storyline in the first game. Near the campfire, you can also find a fake Psy Cougar jumping out from the bushes. It even roars at you. Back in the real world, Maligula has been unleashed. She conjures up a giant storm that ensnares all nearby Psychonaut agents. Raz and Lily manage to escape. Lily runs off to retrieve her father's real brain, and Raz gets help from his family. At the campsite, Augustus sits surrounded by his family. Ford also planted memories in his mind with the astrolabe. These memories convinced Augustus that Nona had always been his mother, not his aunt. In this moment, these memories are coming undone, leaving Augustus's mind in disarray. When Raz approaches him, he only has one thing to say.
I lost her, Rasputin.
This scene hits hard. Earlier in the game, you can chat with Augustus, and he is incredibly kind and welcoming to Raz. It's a refreshing change of pace after dealing with the interns and Raz's siblings. Augustus is excited to finally embrace his psychic powers and use this as an opportunity to bond with Raz.
Hi, son. Think I'm getting any better at this?
Focus on the hottest thing you can think of.
Okay, then. I'm thinking of your mother.
Dad!
At this moment in time, Augustus is under the impression that Maligula is the psychic who cursed them all to die in water. He even understands that Maligula killed his father, but believes that his mother survived. During that scene at the campgrounds, all of these lies are coming undone in his head, and it's awful to see him go through this. But he's eventually able to bounce back with the help of his family. Raz teams up with the rest of the Aquatos to perform the Devil's Fire Hose. This trick sends Raz flying straight at Maligula, and he jumps into her head. Maligula's mind appears as a destroyed city, likely what Grulovia looked like after her battle with the Psychic Six. Raz approaches Maligula and tries to talk some sense to her, but she doesn't care if they're related. She sends her water serpents on him, but suddenly they turn and attack Maligula instead. Turns out the interns are here to help. Maligula casts aside the waves and appears in her true form to battle.
Careful, children. Oh, I fear a storm is coming.
Maligula glides across the battlefield in her own miniature waterspout. From here, she continually spits out water serpents to attack Raz. It's awesome to see her legendary hydrokinesis in action, though levitation and Psyblast are really all you need to get through the battle. Throughout this fight, we see Lucy trying to escape Maligula, symbolizing how Maligula has taken control over Lucy. Before the final phase of the battle, Lucy manages to break free and we see Maligula grapple with the death of her sister, Morona.
I killed my sister. I killed my sister. What's so bad? I kill lots of people.
Oh my god. What sets Maligula leagues above Loboto and Oleander is that she's killed people. Tons of people. And in this moment, we see that she has no regrets. Raz and Lucy team up and she grants him a heap of psychic energy, turning Raz into a giant. This mirrors the ending of Psychonauts 1, where Augustus does the same for Raz. In this state, we battle against a giant Maligula. The fight, again, isn't very hard, but it's a whole lot of fun to just wail on her. We push Maligula down into the pit that Ford created with the astrolabe. She tries to grab at Lucy, but Lucy uses a pair of scissors to cut her clothes and send Maligula into the abyss. It's such a minor detail that Lucy is the one to lay the final blow on Maligula, but I love it so much. It ties back into Hollis's message from the beginning of the game.
We're here to help people fight their own demons. The ones they already have.
The game ends with Raz and the interns graduating from the intern program. They are now official junior agents of the Psychonauts. That was about all the spooky and dark things I could find in Psychonauts 2. Thank you for joining me again on another long video. If I missed anything, feel free to let me know in the comments. The world of Psychonauts is just so vast, I'm sure that there's still plenty to look deeper into. During the making of these videos, I was made aware that this year will be the 20th anniversary of the first Psychonauts game. I hope my videos serve as fun little contributions to the celebration. If you're hungry for more Psychonauts content, I 100% recommend the Psych Odyssey series on the Double Fine channel. This documentary follows the development of Psychonauts 2 and gives tons of insight into the process. If you love Psychonauts or are just curious about the process of making a game, you need to watch this series. And if you have seen it all, please let me know what you thought of it. I've been dying to talk to someone about it. It's just so good. I found this cute Easter egg in the game near the classroom in the Motherlobe. There's a poster board with a bunch of flyers on them, and one of these flyers is a sign-up sheet. On the sheet you can find the names of various people who worked on the game and appeared in the documentary. I found this Easter egg after completing the documentary, and when I saw it, I audibly gasped and pointed at the screen like that one Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Let me know if there are any other non-horror games you can think of with their own spooky elements, and we may end up talking about them in a shorter episode of Occult in the Ordinary. Thank you all so much for the support. It means a lot. I'm gonna go sit down now. Happy birthday, Psychonauts. That's all I have for you. Take care.